What's up, people? Welcome to the Joe McFo Show. Today we're going to talk about how I design a character from scratch. And this is going to be a character. His name is Zalam, aka Z, and he is from my project Shadowboxers. And if you want to see the full process, then you can check out the live stream that I did a couple of weeks back, and you'll see how I do it from start to finish, and it's in a couple of parts. What's up, people? Welcome to the Joe McFo Show. Today we're going to talk about how I designed a character from scratch. Now, this character is for my Shadowboxers project, and it's really fun. I work on it every Sunday at 6 p.m. Pacific time on live here on YouTube. So if you ever want to come by and check it out, we'd love to have you. But anyway, the first thing that I do whenever I create a character is it always starts with the story and the writing. It's incredibly important to understand exactly who I'm designing in order to do it properly. So once I have an idea for the character in my head, in this case, I wanted this sort of rebellious young teenager, or I guess young man, not really teenager. He's 18 years old, and he is the cousin of my main character, Javen. And the next thing I did is I found a bunch of reference from things that I thought would inspire me. So in this case, I chose a lot of references from different rappers, specifically Bishop from the movie Juice, played by Tupac, may he rest in peace. And then I was also thinking of Lenny Kravitz. I also thought about Hobie Brown from Across the Spider-Verse and a couple of other people. And the idea was just to get a sense of the vibe or a sense of the overall aesthetic that I was going for. I knew I wanted someone who was kind of mysterious, someone who had this slightly dark energy, but not necessarily evil per se. And I wanted him to feel a lot more mature than my main character. So the next step that I do is I will do a bunch of sketches. So I tend to do between 6 to 10 sketches for anything, if not more. I always encourage doing more sketches than less because it's easier to create that way when you give yourself options. And I eventually landed on something that I really liked. I kind of liked the look he had with the locks tied up, but two of them have kind of come down on the sides of his face, and the piercings and the slits in the eyebrows. Something about that seemed really, really fun for me. And it's a completely unique silhouette compared to what I have done in my other characters. And once I get a pretty clean sketch of that, I'll decide what I want his body to look like. In this situation, I know I wanted him to be very tall and lanky, sort of like this T'Challa drawing who's done by Sean O'Neill, who's a very famous artist in the animation industry. And I wanted him to kind of have a similar build as like a Snoop Dogg or something, someone who's not really muscular, but just kind of tall and lanky. And then from there, I gathered a bunch of brand new references, and I found a bunch of clothes that I thought would be fun. So I found overalls, I found jackets, I found a bunch of different stuff. And the fun thing about reference is you can never have too much. I personally have a Pinterest board where I have all these saved images. I want to say there are at least 2,000 images of different clothing, different buildings, character ideas, and all this stuff. And it helps me because I'm trying to create a world that doesn't already exist, and I'm trying to keep it consistent. And so it really helps me to have things like that working for me. And in this case, what I was really focusing on was the things like shape language and trying to figure out exactly how I wanted him to read. I wanted to add some different pieces of clothing. So I was like, oh, maybe he has a chain. Maybe he's got these types of shoes. Maybe this hairstyle will really work for him. And I would actually end up circling the elements that I liked. So the reason I do so many sketches is because I'll have, ideas in some sketches that I might like the hairstyle of the first one, the pants of number 4, the shoes of 6, and the shirt of 1, or something like that. And I will end up mixing and matching them, and then I'll put it together as sort of this conglomerate vision of what I picture this character to be. And once I do that, then I will do a slightly tighter drawing, not to make it, I'm not ready for clean lines yet. I'm not ready for turnarounds or even color just yet. What I'm doing here is I'm sort of reestablishing what I've already built. And this is where I really spend time to define the shapes, and I want to make sure that everything looks good. And there might be some things that in my sketch, that my really loose, rough sketch looked cool, but it might not in the final line work. So in this case, I changed up his collar because I didn't want him to have a vest and a second collared shirt. I thought that was kind of a weird silhouette, at least for this character. I'm not saying it's impossible to pull that off, but I don't think it really fit for this character right here. I also, you can see on the side, I was designing his chain that he's going to be wearing, and I was also thinking about, okay, is the puffy vest that he's wearing, is that puffy enough? Is it too square? Is it too big for him where you can't see the slim figure that he has, which actually ended up being a bit of an issue. I had to kind of sacrifice the slim figure in a sense because it's covered up by the jacket. Now, if I ever have a drawing where I have him take off the vest, I said jacket earlier, I meant vest. If I ever have a situation where I have him take it off, then the lankiness will show much more clearly. But because I don't particularly imagine doing that, I decided to just shape it in a certain way that would help accentuate the V shape or that taper from the shoulders to the waist and then down to the hip area. In this process, I'm just being very, very messy. I know the lines may look relatively clean, but I tend to stay rather zoomed in, and I saw all the flaws in it. And it's at this stage, once I start really kind of figuring out exactly what I want, that I start getting really excited about the character. And in my mind, that's when I'll start thinking about color schemes, and I'll really start to analyze how I'm going to have this character working. And at this stage, I also think it's important to figure out if the clothes that you have are actually practical on this character. There are some things that look cool, but don't necessarily work as a design. Sometimes it's the type of gloves that they're wearing. Sometimes it's the shoes. Maybe they have a belt that fits on them in a weird way, or something doesn't make sense. And those are things that I have to figure out at this stage. There was actually one character who had a belt that was sort of crooked, and I realized if that were to exist in real life, it would constantly be poking her in her stomach because it had a certain design, a certain angle for the belt buckle. And I was like, oh, that's not comfortable. So you have to think in terms of realism when you're trying to design characters that live in a more realistic world. If you're doing something cartoony like SpongeBob or Fairly Odd Parents, you can get away with a lot more, but that's not what I'm trying to do. And so at this stage, then I will start adding some basic shading, and the line drawing is pretty tight right now. There's some things that I'm going to fix, and that's where the stage is. Admittedly, doing line art is what takes the longest amount of time. It is a very tedious process, and some people don't necessarily enjoy it. I personally have a love-hate relationship with it. I love the lines that I draw, and I like how clean they've become, especially when I look at my old work, but it is really time-consuming, and I think part of that just has to do with my experience level. I think 5-10 years from now, I'm going to be a lot faster with it, but there's still a lot that I have to learn in this time. And even things like hands, I still mess up. So you guys might see me redrawing the hand 2 or 3 or 4 times because something wasn't working. And that's just how the process goes. Sometimes things don't work the way that you want immediately, and you just have to figure it out. So at this stage, I'm just refining, cleaning up the shadows, and I'm also adding little details like the tattoos on him, for example, or the little bit of his shirt that's not tucked in. I gave him the chain. I'm trying to figure out the bottom of his pants and things like his earring or the just little things like that. That's really, really helpful for me to start thinking about. And then we start getting to the exciting portion, which is color. This is something that I did on my 3rd stream working on this character. We did a whole stream on color specifically. And I already had colors in mind for this character. I think that I wanted to do something with purple, greens, and blacks. And obviously I don't want to just settle on that, so I had several variations. I changed up his skin complexion. I decided I wanted to try different saturations for his shirt, different colors for the pants and things like that. And I always think it's much better to do color when you have the line work done, or at least close to done. That way you have a much easier time understanding what your character is going to look like. And we have different references here. I've thought of different characters that I really liked. I chose a lot of references from Urbans and the game Soundfall because I have an idea of the vibe that this project is going to be. And then what I did is the same process for when I pick out a clothing design, I will number up all of my colors, and then I will start to pick my favorites. So you see me circling the things that I liked, and then I started combining them. And I said, okay, let's change the color here. Let's add this. Let's make this more saturated. Let's make the values really work. And then at this stage, this is pretty much how things ended up. I added a little bit of colors change in the hair. I wanted it to be partially black and partially magenta. And yeah, this is me kind of wrapping up the character. But yeah, that's how I designed a character from start to finish, not including the character turnaround. That's a whole other thing. And if you guys want, maybe I will include a video on that one day. Thank you guys for watching the video. And if you like, please like and subscribe to see more content from me. All right, y'all. Peace.